Welcome in, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at Bangladesh. We've got the Daily Star from December 25th. Could be kind of an interesting Christmas present for ourselves.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. I mean, this paper really gives us a glimpse into a country that's kind of, I don't know, teetering between, like, hope and uncertainty.
Yeah. A lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much happening politically. You know, we've got just a few months since the whole Sheikh Hasina situation, she stepped down and now this interim government is pushing for some big changes.
Huge changes, yeah.
Yeah. The front page is just dominated by these reforms, right?
Absolutely.
Cybersecurity law, constitutional changes, talk of extraditing Hasina from India. It's like they're trying to hit the reset button.
I mean, it feels that way, doesn't it? It feels like a kind of whirlwind of activity.
Totally.
To show that, things are different now.
Yeah, like we're serious about reform this time, but is it all just for show?
Well, it's, that's the big question, isn't it? Because this new cybersecurity law, for example, on the surface, they're saying it's about protecting citizens online, not about,
censorship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not restricting free speech.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal, right?
Huge.
Given the whole, concerns about press freedom and all of that under the previous regime.
It's like walking this tightrope, right?
Absolutely.
Appeasing the international community while also trying to, I don't know, assert their own.
Right. And you have to remember the context, too.
Yeah.
This is a country with a history of, political instability.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's naturally going to be some skepticism about whether these reforms are the real deal or not.
Yeah. Are they genuine or is it just window dressing? Like, I don't know a new coat of paint on the same old system.
Yeah. And the thing is, they can talk about all these grand plans, but the proof is in the pudding.
Always is, right?
Will this cybersecurity law actually lead to less online harassment?
Less fraud. Or will it just be, another tool to silence dissent?
Right. And it feels like that same skepticism applies to the constitutional changes, too.
For sure.
Term limits, limiting the prime minister's power. It sounds great in theory, but can you really change a system that's been so entrenched for so long?
Well, it's a massive undertaking. And it'll require more than just words on paper.
Totally.
You need a fundamental shift in the political culture, a commitment to transparency.
And accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From the top down.
And then there's Sheikh Hasina.
Right.
Still looming large over all of this.
Yeah, the elephant in the room.
Yeah. They want her back from India to face trial. But what are the chances of that actually happening? It's a tough one.
Yeah.
India's got their own interests.
Of course.
To consider. They may not be thrilled about the idea of handing over a former head of state.
Especially to a government that's still kind of finding its feet. But the article says the foreign ministry is ready to remind India if they don't hear back soon about their extradition request.
Wow.
That sounds pretty bold, don't you think?
It definitely sends a message that they're serious about holding her accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also risky, isn't it?
Yeah.
They could escalate tensions.
With India.
Exactly. At a time when Bangladesh
can't really afford that.
Can't really afford it.
So politically, it's a bit of a powder keg.
Absolutely.
But the economic situation.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't look too stable either.
Not at all. I mean, the Daily Star paints this rather bleak picture.
Right.
Especially when you look at these infrastructure projects.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this constant theme of,
cost overruns, delays.
Mm-hmm. Feasibility studies that are questionable at best.
The Karnafuli Tunnel is like the poster child for this whole mess.
Yeah, the poster child.
It's supposed to be this game changer connecting Chittagong to the south. Boost trade, reduce travel time. But instead, it's just this money pit.
Yeah, it's underperforming, costing taxpayers way more than expected.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's emblematic of this larger problem.
Yeah.
With these big projects.
Well, poor planning, bad execution. I mean, even the railways advisor is quoted as saying that project costs in Bangladesh are just like way higher than in neighboring countries, even India.
Higher than India.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's urging engineers to like work sincerely to bring those costs down. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like a cry for help almost.
Yeah, it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, what is going on? And like, is it just inefficiency? Is there something more sinister going on?
Right, because it hints at maybe a deeper issue of corruption within the system.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to, kind of take away from this. It's not just about building these fancy new things. It's about building them right.
Exactly.
With transparency and accountability. Making sure they actually benefit the people they're meant to serve.
Because development isn't just about, concrete and steel.
Yeah.
It's about
Governance.
good governance,
Yeah.
sound planning, a real commitment to the well-being of the people.
Okay. Well, on that note, maybe let's take a little break from the heavy stuff.
Sure.
I found this article fascinating, The Overlooked Wildlife of Dhaka.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
It's like this reminder that even in this massive city, nature finds a way.
Right.
Sparrows, kites, even monkeys causing mischief.
Right.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And the article talks about how mothers use these stories of kites stealing children's eyes.
Oh, yeah. If they misbehave.
If they misbehave.
That's like this little window into Bangladeshi folklore, isn't it?
I thought so. I thought it was so interesting. And it makes you think about, how urbanization is impacting these creatures.
Right. They're having to adapt, find new ways to live alongside humans.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, as Dhaka keeps growing, how do we balance that development with protecting the natural world?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
A very important question.
And, speaking of cultural observations, they also had a section about how Christmas was celebrated in Bangladesh.
Yeah. A mix of festivities and some somber reflection, I think.
Yeah, you had the president, the chief advisor, both issuing messages of goodwill,
Yeah.
TV programs, capturing that holiday spirit.
Right.
But then you also have the story about the Khasi community, their betel nut plantations vandalized just before Christmas.
Yeah. A reminder that even during the holidays, hardship persists.
Especially for marginalized communities.
Yeah. And it also brings up that issue of religious tolerance, the need for understanding and respect between different communities in Bangladesh.
Which is something they've been grappling with for a long time.
Right. For a long time.
But, there are these glimmers of hope, like that story about Monir Hossain in Cox's Bazar.
Oh, yeah. What a story. A real testament to the power of education and skills development.
I mean, this kid learned computer skills through a UNICEF program, and now at 18, he's making money freelancing.
Wow.
Supporting his family and advocating against child marriage.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's a phenomenal story.
Like what he's been able to achieve.
And it makes you think about the potential of Bangladesh's youth.
Oh, huge potential. Especially in this increasingly digital world.
Yeah, if they're given the right opportunities.
Right. The right support.
It's not just about helping them, it's about investing in the future of the country.
Exactly.
But before we get too carried away on the optimism train, we've got to talk about those international tensions.
Yeah. Things are heating up with India.
Big controversy surrounding that tweet from Prime Minister Modi about the 1971 war.
Oh, yeah, that was
It seems small.
a bit of a diplomatic incident.
But it really struck a nerve.
It did. It did. And it raises this question about how history is interpreted and how that impacts relations today.
Because on the surface, Modi was praising the Indian soldiers who fought for Bangladesh's independence.
Right.
But it was seen as downplaying the role of the Bangladeshis themselves.
Exactly. Like India was trying to take credit for their liberation struggle.
Rewrite history a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And as the Daily Star points out, it's fueling anti-India sentiment.
Of course.
Which is not good for anyone.
Not good for anyone.
They argue that India needs to be more nuanced, more inclusive in their approach to Bangladesh.
Yeah, because constantly harping on about, communal narratives and security concerns, it's not helpful.
It's not. And I think this incident highlights the need for a more mature dialogue.
I agree.
One that acknowledges that shared history, but also respects Bangladesh's sovereignty and its right to choose its own path.
It's a complex relationship.
It is.
But a crucial one.
For both countries.
For both, absolutely.
And we're back with our deep dive into all things Bangladesh. We've only just begun to uncover the layers of what's happening there.
It really is fascinating how much the Daily Star captures, right? Like this incredible snapshot of a nation that's transforming.
Absolutely. And one thing that really jumped out is this focus on empowering young people. There are so many stories that just show you how investing in education and skills can really have a ripple effect.
Like that article on the UNICEF program at Cox's Bazar. They're doing amazing work empowering youth from those marginalized communities, especially young women who, face so many obstacles.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more than just skills training, right? It's about giving them a voice, helping them become leaders. Like, look at Tarjina actor Tasmim. Her story is just Mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah, I was so impressed by her. I
Yeah.
mean, she didn't just overcome all these personal hurdles to learn things like photo editing and social media management. She actually used those skills to become an activist.
It's like she took this opportunity and ran with it. She's tackling things like stalking child marriage violence against women. She even helped a family file a case against someone who was harming a young girl.
Wow.
Yeah. So you see how these programs can have a real impact, not just on individuals, but on the whole community.
It really challenges what we think about development aid.
Yeah.
It's not just handouts. It's about giving people the tools to create change themselves.
And it's not just happening in Cox's Bazar either. The Daily Star also talks about the challenges and opportunities for people with disabilities all across Bangladesh. They even have this whole section on creating inclusive workplaces.
It's great to see this getting more attention. I mean, for so long, people with disabilities have been sidelined, but there's a real push now to make Bangladesh more inclusive, a place where everyone can contribute.
And what I found interesting is they go beyond just quotas and legal frameworks, right? You're about changing mindsets, seeing diversity as a strength, valuing the unique skills and perspectives that people with disabilities bring.
There was that one quote that I loved: focus on abilities, not disabilities.
Yeah.
So simple, but so powerful, right?
Absolutely. And it's smart economically, too. If you create more inclusive workplaces, you're tapping into all this talent that's been overlooked.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
But it'll take a joint effort from everyone you know, the government, businesses, society as a whole, to make it happen.
Speaking of joint efforts, the Daily Star also tackles this issue of corruption head-on. There's an editorial that calls out the civil service unrest as unacceptable.
Yeah, that's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
Especially given how sensitive those administrative reforms are. But it shows how deeply people feel about this corruption that's plagued Bangladesh for so long.
And they go beyond just criticizing the officers who are unhappy. They say the government needs to step up too, resolve these disputes through dialogue, keep their promises about reform. It's about accountability on both sides.
Right, because reform isn't just about changing laws. It's about changing behavior, creating a culture of transparency and accountability. And that requires everyone to do their part.
Okay, so we've covered politics, economics, social issues. What about the cultural scene in Bangladesh? Does the Daily Star give us any insights there?
Oh, definitely. Bangladesh has such a vibrant cultural scene. There are articles about new films, music awards, even a new episode of that popular TV show, Dewey Shaw.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I was intrigued by that film Makeup. It's finally been cleared for release after being banned for 5 years.
Wow, that's quite a story. Why was it banned in the first place?
Apparently for being too offensive. They thought it depicted the film industry in a bad light. But I guess times have changed, or maybe the censors are feeling more lenient.
It's interesting, right, how societal values shift and how art can challenge norms. The fact that Makeup is being released now might show a growing tolerance for different views.
Maybe. And on the international scene, there's buzz about the Grammys honoring Prince with the Lifetime Achievement Award. Shows how music can transcend borders. Artists like him inspire people everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of iconic figures, there's talk about Christopher Nolan's next project, an adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey, with a cast like Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Zendaya. It's going to be huge.
Sounds epic. But let's bring it back to Bangladesh. The Daily Star covers those everyday issues too, you know? Traffic woes, concerns about muggings. It gives you a sense of what people are dealing with on a daily basis.
And of course, no discussion of Bangladesh is complete without cricket. There's coverage of the Boxing Day test between Australia and India. Huge rivalry. And with the series tied at 1-1, it's going to be intense.
For sure. And then locally, you have the National Cricket League T20 tournament, a chance to discover new talent and boost the country's performance in the shorter format of the game.
Cricket is so deeply rooted in Bangladesh's culture, right? And it evokes such passion. But, amidst all that excitement, the Daily Star doesn't shy away from those darker realities.
Yeah, there's that report on the murder of those 7 crew members on a vessel in the Meghna River. It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable life can be, even in a nation that's striving for progress.
And that fire in the Rohingya camp, tragic. 2 lives lost, many injured. It highlights the ongoing struggles of this displaced community.
It's a sobering reminder that even as we talk about development and progress, there are people who are struggling, who need our support.
Absolutely. We can't forget about those realities. We have to work towards a society that's more just and equitable for everyone.
And speaking of justice, there's a story about student protesters confronting the owners of Somore Television. They're accusing them of bias and propaganda.
Interesting. So they're advocating for press freedom?
They say they are.
but also calling for responsible reporting.
Exactly. They want unbiased news. The interim government's trying to stay out of it, saying individuals are responsible for their actions.
Tricky situation.
Hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out and what it means for media freedom in Bangladesh.
Definitely. It shows that balance between freedom of expression and preventing misinformation, hate speech. It's a debate happening everywhere,
Yeah,
really.
a global issue.
So Bangladesh is facing so many complex issues, but it also has incredible potential.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, right? It's a glimpse into a nation in flux, trying to find its way in the world.
Welcome back to the final part of our Bangladesh deep dive. I can't believe how much we've already uncovered. Everything from political shakeups to, these stories of resilience and even a bit of entertainment news.
It's been quite the journey through the Daily Star, and we still have more to explore.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that's becoming clear is that Bangladesh is really looking outward. They're not just focused on internal issues, they're actively engaging with the rest of the world.
You're right. And the Daily Star highlights that with a couple of articles on foreign policy. There's this one about Bangladesh trying to strengthen ties with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
You're right, ASEAN, for those who might not know, it's a political and economic union of 10 countries in Southeast Asia. They've become a major force, and it sounds like Bangladesh wants in on that.
Exactly. The article suggests that Bangladesh sees ASEAN as a potential source of, trade investment, maybe even security cooperation. It's a smart strategy to diversify their partnerships and reduce their reliance on those traditional allies.
But it's not an easy process, is it? I mean, the article mentions that Bangladesh's own governance issues could be a problem, specifically concerns about democratic backsliding.
Right. ASEAN has standards. They expect a commitment to democracy, good governance. So if Bangladesh is serious about joining, they need to address those internal challenges. They need to prove they're committed to these principles.
So it's more than just shaking hands and signing deals. It's about building a reputation as a reliable partner.
Absolutely. Your foreign policy and your domestic policy, they're connected. How Bangladesh performs on the world stage depends on how they handle things at home.
Okay, well, let's shift back to some of those internal challenges, particularly with development projects. This article by Dr. Syed Ahmed really got me thinking. He calls it Bangladesh's feasibility study fallacy.
Oh, yeah, that was a great piece. He basically argues that way too many projects in Bangladesh get approved based on these flawed feasibility studies,
So they sound great in theory, but
but they fail to deliver in reality. He uses the Karnafuli Tunnel as one example. But he cites other cases where projects have led to huge cost overruns, environmental damage, even negative social impacts.
and he even questions whether any projects have ever been rejected based on a feasibility study. Like, is there really a connection between the assessment and the actual decisions being made?
Right, and he thinks it all boils down to a conflict of interest. Often the same organizations funding the projects are paying for the feasibility studies, so of course they want to make the project look good, even if it's not.
So there's this pressure to just approve things regardless of whether they're actually good for the country or the people they're supposed to help.
Exactly. It's all about getting the green light. Dr. Ahmed argues for more transparency, more accountability, more rigorous process to make sure these projects are truly beneficial.
It's a huge issue for Bangladesh, right? Especially with their economic challenges. Wasting money on bad projects doesn't just hurt the economy, it erodes public trust.
Speaking of trust, the Anti-Corruption Commission is back in the news. They're investigating former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her family for corruption.
This is just the latest in a string of investigations into officials from the previous government. It seems like this interim government is serious about cracking down on corruption. But will it actually work?
It's a tough battle. Corruption is deeply rooted, but it's a fight they have to take on if they want to move forward.
And it's not just about going after big names, right? It's about fixing the systems that allow corruption to thrive in the first place.
You need strong institutions, transparency ways for citizens to hold their leaders accountable. It's a long road.
Speaking of accountability, there's a report on the Electoral Reform Commission meeting with law enforcement officials. They're discussing irregularities in the last 3 national elections, and some officials admitted they were pressured by higher-ups, even mentioned money changing hands.
Wow, that's pretty damning.
Right. It confirms what a lot of people suspected, that elections have been manipulated.
So what's the commission doing about it?
Well, they're proposing some reforms, like having election commission officials run things instead of government officials, trying to reduce that political influence.
Okay, so steps in the right direction. But will they actually be implemented? And will they actually make a difference? Only time will tell.
It'll take commitment from everyone involved, not just the interim government. But, even with all these challenges, there's something hopeful about the Daily Star.
I agree. It's a newspaper that doesn't sugarcoat things. But it also highlights the resilience of the Bangladeshi people, their creativity, their determination.
It's like all those stories we've talked about, the young people like Monir and Tarjina creating opportunities for themselves and their communities, all the people fighting for a better future.
It shows you that even when things are tough, people don't give up. They keep pushing for change.
And that's what makes Bangladesh so fascinating to follow. It's a country in transition, trying to learn from its past and build a better future. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left feeling both concerned and optimistic.
Bangladesh is at a crossroads, for sure. The decisions they make now will have a huge impact. But I have faith in the Bangladeshi people. Their resilience will guide them. Their story is still being written. And we'll be here to see how it unfolds.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Bangladesh. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.